Hi guys, Fabio Palvelli here with the D2 conference. At D2 we believe in bringing you the right content for you to keep learning and keep growing in the field of archiviz so that you as an artist can unlock your true creative potential. This is why we have designed the Inspiration series, a small collection of talks done to help you connect the creativity dots in and out of our professional field. If this is your first time here on our channel, hit that subscribe button, and if you like our videos, feel free to share them with your friends and colleagues. It will mean the world to us. This time on the show, I am interviewing Chris Do, the Dojo Master, the one and only founder of The Future. It is hard to label Chris for what he does. He's a designer, but some might call him a consultant, some might call him a strategist. I call him a life changer. I had the pleasure to attend a workshop with him a year ago about business and mindset and how to overcome clients' objections, and his teachings helped me propelling my career to the next level. The good news is that Chris is coming to Vienna. We're organizing a workshop together. Link will be in the description, and what can I say? This is something I personally would never miss. Ladies and gentlemen, Chris Do. Alright, so hi Chris. Thanks a lot for taking the time. I really appreciate it. I know that people will appreciate this as well. And I want to start this interview by saying that I made the mistake in the past when interviewing others to wear, so to say, the hat of the expert, because I felt that that was my job, you know, to make the interview and to be there to ask the right questions. But I'm pretty sure that, you know, there is no question that was already asked to you. I have a job to do, which is, you know, making this, but I'm going to try and pay attention to what you say, because one of the things that I've learned when I met you in Milan is that you are intense. And you gotta pay attention to every single word that you say. And that's what I want to do during this interview.
Okay.
That's why hopefully you'll do most of the talking, and I'll be there, you know, to fill the gaps in case something is not clear. I'm Italian, so, you know, English, it's not my first language. So forgive me something it's not clear. And also forgive me if the questions seem to be very open, but I want to really give you the chance to do most of the talking because, as I said, there is so much value in what you have to share with me. So, are we ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, Chris, welcome. You don't need an introduction. I am pretty sure that a lot of people already know you, but just in case, would you mind telling us who you are and what you do?
Sure. First of all, ciao everybody. My name is Chris Do, and I'm the founder of The Future, which is an online education platform. We use social platforms like YouTube, Twitter, and Instagram to teach designers the business of design. But this was not always my job. My original job in my company is called Blind, and it's a design service agency. We make commercials and music videos for really big agencies and really large brands. But I'm caught in between two worlds right now, the old world of making things for other people and now making products and helping to empower creative entrepreneurs. And so we're making a hard transition as of this year, 2019, that if all goes according to plan, we'll no longer do design service work for other clients. We'll only be serving our community, our audience, and our fans. And I think this is where we're going as a company.
This is amazing. This is really amazing. And you have no idea how much you have inspired me in my own path, but probably we'll get to that later. The Future, it's probably the main reason why you and I are having this conversation. You share, you know, all this knowledge relative to the business side of design. Do you think that the business notions that you talk about and you share with your community apply to other creative disciplines besides, say, graphic and motion design?
Yes, absolutely. I believe the business principles don't really care about what it is that you do. They work. They work for any industry, whether you're selling vacuum cleaners or you're designing the packaging or branding for a vacuum cleaner company. They work because they're just the fundamental tenets of how to conduct yourself in a business transaction.
That's great. And okay, so, you know, you've been talking to a lot more artists that probably I have. In your opinion, what is one of the things that artists still don't get about money? And I'll let you answer, and then I'll explain you why I ask you this question.
Okay. I think artists have an unhealthy relationship with money. They feel that it degrades their art to be able to talk about it and put a price tag on it. So that's the first issue. And so they want to stay away from it. It makes them feel really uncomfortable to talk about money. And according to Blair Enns, if those that don't know how to talk about money don't make it. So we got to get comfortable talking about money like almost every other professional business does. When you go to a hospital, if you buy a car, they talk about money right up front, and they're not shy about it either. You don't have to be. The other thing that artists have trouble with money is assigning value to work. In an industrial revolution model, an honest day's work equals an honest day's pay. So we tie hourly and effort into value and perceived value, and we need to decouple that. We need to break those ideas apart. If we can focus on achieving results for clients, and results can be not even like business related, it could just be something that's very clearly defined with success metrics. If we focus on that, then we can say that then we're left up to our own devices to solve the problem in the best way that we see fit. And whether we spend 1 hour or 200 hours on it is up to us. But we are going to put value on solving the problem and not the time spent creating it. Quick couple of analogies here for you. If you're an hourly employee and you seek to get a raise, all you have to do is to be less productive. If you're less productive, essentially you're getting a raise. And that doesn't make sense. That doesn't seem fair or seem right, but that is in truth what's happening. So if you spend 40 hours doing less, you get paid more for the tasks that you complete. Now that seems like an insane concept. And let's apply this again forward. If you're taking a quiz, do we grade the quiz based on the amount of time and effort spent on something, or the percentage of correct answers? And now you're starting to realize something about why assigning hours to value is a really poor way of thinking about worth.
Yes. Okay, so basically now I'm gonna try to give you an explanation as of why I asked this question.
Okay.
I have been wildly criticized for, always talking about money in my videos. Often people think that by prioritizing money, the artist, which is, to me also a businessman or a businesswoman, doesn't necessarily care about quality or does not care about the client being happy with, the work that we can provide.
Yes.
Is this something that you have to deal with, or that you have had to deal with? Do you have to explain yourself with others? Do people say things like, Chris Do, the guy that only cares about money or something?
I get a little bit of that, but probably not as much as you. And I think it might be a cultural thing to expect Americans to talk about money and to be maybe more capitalistic in nature. So I do get some of those criticisms that all I do is care about money. But it's hard to reconcile that, because if I'm creating content to teach you how to be a better negotiator, how to price your project fairly, how to teach you design skills, and I'm doing it for free essentially on YouTube, how can I be all about the money then? So that doesn't sit well with them. And it's only a small percentage, but I'll say this. If people are very critical of you, saying all Fabio cares about is money, I think you just need to tune them out to say, okay, maybe all I do is care about money. And if my message doesn't help you, then find somebody's message that does. But I would not fall into that trap and be consumed in debating this with them online, because it'll suck away all your energy and it'll kind of demotivate you, right? And I think the opposite. Let's just say that you're an artist and you don't care about money at all. And that's perfectly a viable option for you too. So if all you care about is making art and starving, because essentially that's what happens if you don't learn how to talk about money, then that's your right to do as well. I'm not critical of that, and that's for you. But you and me, Fabio, we're there for people who want to live a sustainable life, pursuing the things that we love and that we're passionate about. And for those people, tune in. Sit up straight and take some notes, because we'll teach you how to do it in a way that doesn't conflict with every moral fiber in your body. And I don't look at getting paid more as lower quality work. And people need to understand that. That's conflation. It's equating two things, that the more you get paid, the lower the quality work. In fact, it's the opposite. When I get paid more, I'm getting paid to pay attention, to give it my undivided attention. And you know this, when you're paid a little bit of money, you have to take on lots of work. So how can you give each individual project and customer or client of yours the attention that the project deserves? That's one. Two, when you get paid more, It also means you have greater resources to hire some of the best collaborators. So if you wanted an excellent 3D modeler or a lighter or texture artist, you can hire the very best. In fact, if you get paid enough, you can hire Academy Award-winning people to work on your project, therefore servicing your client even better. So this is a false idea. Categorically, it's untrue that the more you get paid, the lower the quality of work. If anything, it gives you more options to give higher value, greater attention, and to bring the best artists to work on your projects.
Maybe, you know, now we go a little bit away from this stuff. I want to ask you something, you know, that probably you get asked as well. When I get contacted by consulting clients that want to have my services, I tell them, look, the stuff that I can do for you is exactly what I do in my YouTube videos. And they'll ask me, so why should I pay you if all your stuff is already online? And one of the things that I tell them is, I'm giving you my time, you know, I'm answering the questions that you might have. And I think that very often people, you know, they tend to forget that you should value yourself as a person and not only like the stuff that you can create, you know. I think that you can crack the code of like being a valuable person also when the services that you provide help the client feel, say, more secure about something that they're doing. If they feel like, you know, they can go home and sleep because they don't have to worry about the guy that doesn't, you know what to do and they have to follow up and give feedback and all that kind of stuff. Do you know what I mean?
Yes. So, do you have a question?
No. I wanted to just expand on this.
Yeah, I feel it. Yeah. I totally feel it.
I want to ask you one more thing.
Okay.
In the field of architectural visualization, one of the things that artists struggle the most with is managing clients and their requests. Often clients come with very specific briefs, like I need 2 images, this exact view, this camera, this mood. These clients are often very alpha types, they're business owners, they're designers themselves. So, you know, they have a clear idea and they think that, you know, they know better. And often they see these services as a sort of like a commodity. You know, I don't use you, I go to somebody else. Now, for an artist that wants to make the shift and become more of a creative consultant, how do you handle these situations? How do you use this to kind of make your client understand, I am not a commodity, I'm not a person that makes only, you know, that clicks the button and creates the rendering. How do I make that shift and show you that I'm more than just a person that, you know, makes images?
Right, like a pixel pusher, right?
Yes.
So the problem there is an issue of positioning and how you're positioned in the way that you interact with your client and how they see you. So right now, you market yourself as an archviz company and you show really amazing, beautifully rendered 3D architectural visualization, right? And so when they're thinking about somebody, it's really hard for them to tell the difference between one company versus the other. And so then they're going to shop based on price and they're going to assume they have to tell you what to do all the time. And that's the nature of the relationship. It's almost like how you're introduced to them. If you do what we do and you elevate yourself away from selling the thing that you make, but you sell clarity and insight into business objectives, and by the way, we make archviz, then the conversation will shift dramatically. So when my clients approach me, and we do archviz work too, but we don't lead with that. What we lead is, we lead with brand strategy. We try to understand how best to market your building, your property, so that you can get it leased or sold. We profile the customers. We figure out what their pain points and challenges are. And once we resolve that, we figure out what the benefits and the features are to your specific property. And then collectively, we agree on what vantage point, what rendering, how many images you need, should it be static or moving, and then they leave that up to us. We bid on that, and then we just do it. And there's very little pushback. If anything, it's very minor in terms of like what the requests are, but they definitely don't want to be sitting next to us, minding what we're doing. And part of that could also be the selection of the clients that you're getting, that they might have too much free time, that they don't have enough important business matters to do, that they're busy playing fake pretend art director with you. And I don't want those kind of clients. So you can have a conversation and be very upfront. You can say to them, look, I hope that you like our work. And if you do, the way that we get here is for you not to sit with us. We find that that's a waste of your time and a waste of your money. And we just don't work that way. And if you want to be an art director and you want to tightly control that process, we're probably not a good fit for you. I'm going to be upfront about that. So we owe it to ourselves and we owe it to our client to be clear with them, to lay out the rules of engagement early on so they get to make a choice and we get to make a choice as to who we want to work with.
Okay, let me just, because you said something that it's very important, positioning. How would you go on about positioning yourself as a higher rate consultant, somebody that you can trust before the decision is made for, say, the deliverables, before somebody says we need 4 images? How do you put yourself in between that tight little spot?
Who hires you, the architect or the developer?
It depends. It can be like both architects and developers. Usually the bigger money is in development because developers have more of a business mindset. Architects, they see it as a communication tool, so very often they don't even budget that. Right.
So you need to be closer to the decision makers, and that's really important because you're dealing with an intermediate agency, in this case an architect, so maybe they didn't budget for it and they're very particular about what they want and they want to control the process. They're artists and that's how artists behave and think. If you get into the higher level in terms of this chief marketing officer or VP of marketing, and then we're talking about a very different kind of conversation because they're ultimately the decision makers, so they can actually insist the architect work with you and you can sidestep that whole thing so you only have one person to please. It's hard enough to make one person happy. It's much, much more difficult when you have somebody second guessing. They're like, well, we want this, but then the client doesn't want this now. And you get caught in the middle, but you don't get paid for it. And that's really dangerous. So if you can position yourself so that you're aligned with the overall business objectives of the developers. And luckily, we're talking about a topic I have some experience with. And then you can handle the entire brand strategy, and then the architect will give you the assets that you need to help them sell the property. Ultimately, the architect doesn't care about the images. What they do care about is having a smooth process and developing a really beautiful, amazing property. So for them, this might even be a relief of a burden that they don't want to deal with, right? As long as you don't screw it up. So if you can work with the business people and find out, well, what are we trying to do? What do we think will ultimately sell this property or lease it really quickly? Are we talking about certain amenities and features? Is it the award-winning architecture? Is it the lobby? What is it that makes this really unique? And then focus in on that. And if we have a better understanding of who the end user is, the decision maker, we can then help guide our clients down this process. So if we think they're young millennials or they're urbanites or whatever they are, we can figure out, well, according to that, their profile says they like these kinds of things, these kinds of materials, and this kind of art direction or set design, then you can bring that as a value add to your client because you have your finger on the pulse of what people want.
Do you think that to certain extents, tuning some, say, you take out of your week one day to do some research and development and kind of tune those projects in order to target, so to say, the kind of client that you would like to, find? Can this be something that can be used for artists, say, to attract different brands, different types of clients? Can this be a strategy that can be implemented?
I think 100%, and it's something that's necessary for you to do. So people like to hire people that are like them, who share their same beliefs, tastes, and opinion. And if you don't do a lot of, say, postmodern stuff with glass and steel or really raw materials, you cannot expect your client to make that leap of faith with you. What you should do is initiate that by saying, well, we like to do more of this kind of work. Let's just take it upon ourselves to develop a couple portfolio pieces, case studies, if you will, and do some really beautiful rendered art-directed images. And if we do enough of them, 2 or 3 is what it will take. And then when these people are looking for us, they see it like, wow, you guys have this style, this aesthetic zeroed in. So what you want to do is match and mirror, right? If you want a specific type of project or a specific type of client, you want to be able to show things that reflect that you understand their taste and their needs. And if you can do that, there's a greater chance that they're going to hire you. And remember this one thing. People don't necessarily hire the best option. They hire the least risky option So it is upon you to present yourself as the least risky option. And you do that by closing the gap between where you are and where they want you to be.
Man, as I told you, you gotta pay attention to everything that you're saying. I'm kind of like rebooting every single sentence. Chris, this is beautiful. Okay, I'm sorry that I'm jumping from a place to another, but it's I like this because it means that we're getting somewhere. A couple of days ago, I was listening to one of your podcasts, and believe it or not, I'm a avid user of all your content, but you put out so much that I cannot keep up. And a couple of days ago, I was going through the old stuff, which is actually the one that kind of put my own career on a different path. And I was listening to you talking about becoming a VR consultant without having any VR experience. Right. And I love that. Because the next question is going to be about bridging. So like, talking to a client and then finding the resources to kind of solve a problem. So let me just ask it to you. When I talk to other artists and I discuss topics such as, value negotiation, or for instance, bridging, very often the word ethics gets thrown in the mix. And I fear that that's because our field is very tight with like architecture and many other professions which are orbiting around, this hourly rate and, everything. It's like, it's a little bit hard to explain, and I'm for sure doing a very bad job trying to asking this. The question that I'm trying to ask is that where do we draw the line? Where is it important to understand value? And why is it ethical, say, to charge more for those clients for which we can provide more value? Or is it ethic to say, yes, I can do a job, and then you hire somebody else to do it if you're able to close the sale? There are
You're asking lots of questions.
Yes,
there.
I know.
There's a ton of questions. So let me see if I can go in and peel back the layers and unpack what it is that you're asking, right? So first, let's settle the ethics issue of charging different clients different rates for the same essential work. Is that one of your questions?
Yes.
Okay. So one of the things is we all, you, me, and everybody else has a very unique and different worldview. We have different points of view and beliefs and opinions. And we respect that, right? You might like a Picasso painting. I might like a Magritte painting. And I'm not saying you're wrong and you're not saying I'm right. And we are allowed to do this. And so when we say that there's a price for something, why do we say there's only one fixed price? There's only one way of doing it, even though we're the same person. So different people come to us with very different needs and problems to solve. And with your instinct, with your intuition, with your artistry and your design sensibility, you solve each one of those problems. Now you're using very different skills, even though if you measure in time, it looks like it's the same, but it's not. So when a client comes to you and says, we have a 200 floor building, that's too high, 85 floor building, and we need to do 2 images for that. Well, for them, the risk of it going wrong is very great. So if they pick you and you do a really bad job, they're not going to be able to lease the building. They might go bankrupt. And so there's a value to that. And each person comes to you with a different set of decisions and values, right? We know that. Conversely, somebody that's going to build a 3-bedroom house needs 2 images, and it could take you exactly the same amount of time to make this. Their risk and what they're trying to gain is drastically different than the person who's got an 85-floor building. And we need to understand that. So each person gets to determine the price and the problem they're trying to solve. And we know this. We know this for a fact. And how do we know this? Because, as I've made this example before, when you buy a Coke, can of soda at Costco, it's probably like less than 26 cents a can because you're buying in bulk. You have to do the work. You have to drive there. You have to wait in line. You have to load it onto the machine, and then you have to take it off and bring it home, and then you have to make it cold. When you go to a vending machine, that same can of Coke is now $1.75. It went up 6 times in price. Now, you can say literally it is the exact same can of Coke, but now they've gone through the process of buying it, packing it, refrigerating it, and putting it at a place of convenience for you. and you're willing to pay for that. And some people are not. The same people that go to the beach and give their kids $2 to go buy a can of soda aren't the same people who go to Costco and shop and then bring it with them to the beach. They're two different kinds of people. And you would be somewhat foolish if you sat there and said, well, it only cost me 26 cents to buy. I'm going to sell it to you for 50 cents because you've done a lot of labor and you put it in the right place for the person who wants to pay more for it. They have that option. Nobody's forced to decide this. This is not a life and death situation, okay? It's different when we're talking about medical services because that gets into real issues of ethics. Conversely, if you go to a movie theater and somebody empties, they open a can of Coke for you and they pour it into a cup. Now they've added ice. They paid for the cup and the lid and the straw, and they give it to you inside the movie theater because now that's the highest level of service. You're going to pay probably $5 or $6 for something that you could have paid 27 cents for. Again, 3 cans of Coke, served very differently in very different markets, positioned differently, delivered to you in a time of convenience, have very different price tags. So we agree with that logic and we agree with that rationale. Your creative service, depending on who's buying it and where they're buying it, what kind of problem they're trying to solve, has different value to them. I don't like to impose my taste and my sense of fairness and value onto other people. So we have a discussion about it, and then we determine a price that's fair to both parties, to them and to me. And you need to realize this. People do not buy something if they don't feel that they're getting more out of it than what they're giving you. So nobody's being forced to do anything. That's the first part of the question. What's the second part?
Well, the second part is, where I have the feeling that not only in our field, because eventually I also work with like graphic designers and motion designers, that if you do anything like selling a project to somebody and then use, say, cheap labors from another country to do that kind of work, that it's considered as an abusive behavior. Now, I can tell you the way I see it is that every time that I try to hire somebody that can offer me a service for a cheaper price, it is my priority to double their rate. And that's because I want to build relationships. And this has brought me to where I am now, which is happiness. I was able to do that. I know people that don't want to do that, but still, I see it as an open, normal practice, and a lot of people don't. But I would like to hear your thoughts.
Let's talk about that. So I think a lot of creatives, artists especially, don't really look at the world for what it is. They look at it through their very specific lens. So where in what industry, what service are you paying for the cost of something and the person that's making it reaping the financial reward of that? And the answer is almost nowhere. So when you go to a restaurant, if it's a Gordon Ramsay restaurant, well, Gordon Ramsay is not there. He hasn't been there in a really long time. And the person on the line who's prepping the food, the sous chef and the head chef and the expediter, they're all part of a machine to give you something that Gordon approves of. And if he doesn't, over time, the reputation will go down and eventually the business will close. This happens all the time. So your obligation to your client is to understand their problem and to use whatever resources that you have at your disposal to help them solve that problem. How you get there is up to you. And we've already established this with the other answer, okay? We're trying to figure out what problem's worth solving, and we're going to be free to determine how to solve it. Now, if you encounter many artists, which I'm sure you do, you are obligated to pay them a fair rate based on what their expectations are. So if they work at, say, $200 a day, that's their rate, and they're happy to get that. They're just grateful for you to have found the work and to hire them, to treat them fairly, and to pay them on time. Most creatives would say, that's fantastic. You're a dream client. You, as a person who's taking the risk, who's built up the company and built up the reputation, who've done the sales, the bidding process, you get to reap whatever profit there is after all your expenses are paid. And that's your right as an entrepreneur to do that. If you don't do that, then the person who you potentially want to hire, then they don't have a job because you do all the work themselves. And you got to ask people in the creative community right now, how many of us would dream of having such a client where they do all the marketing, the paperwork, and they pay us on time, they treat us with respect, and they pay us what we think we're worth? Everybody would sign up for that program. So why people have an issue with that, I do not know. Perhaps they're stuck trying to be a solo operation, and that's totally okay. That's your right to live that life. But this is not really how business is done. Now, we love products like Apple. You might like brands like Gucci or Yves Saint Laurent, whatever brand that you like. Do you think the person whose name is attached to that brand is the person that's making the product for you? And the answer is no, not at all. That's not a realistic assumption, and we don't care. All we care is they put their stamp of approval on the product. It's designed and built to their spec, and if there's ever a problem, they will fix it for us, and that's what good customer service is. What we also don't realize oftentimes is when you hire a designer and they work on something for 2 or 3 days, and you've only estimated for 1 day, guess what? You owe them their 3 days worth of work, and you can't come back to your client because you've underestimated the amount of work. And that's why you have to build in margins. You have to pad your bid, because it makes assumptions that things go sideways and things that you cannot predict. And also, if that person that you hired drops the ball and you have to hire somebody else, where's that money going to come from? So this is where you're able to pad the budget so that you don't go bankrupt. In fact, many agencies and clients understand this as part of doing business. It's a contingency. You have to add in certain things in case the project goes sideways so that you don't go bankrupt. And if you bid your projects too close to the bone, too close to what it actually costs you, the minute you have one problem, you will be out of business. You will be in the red.
You know, this is one of the questions that I get asked the most. Why companies that charge 4, 5, 6K for an image only pay you 30K a year, you know, as a freelancer? And
well, let me expand on that.
Yeah.
Let me expand on this, because we had this conversation quite a bit. What they don't account for is all the downtime. So if you're employed by Fabio and you get paid 30K a year, and they're like, dude, I produced 10 images, but in the time that you're not working, what are you doing? Who's paying for all that stuff? And what about lost business? When you go after business and you spend all this time and energy, what about the time in which you market your company, your services? Somebody's paying for that. What about the overhead of the building, the insurance, the computers, the software maintenance, IT support? There's a lot of costs that are baked into doing business that people don't account for. They just sit there and look, I only spent 3 hours on this and I helped to make you $10,000. What is up with that? That's not fair. And if you don't think it's fair, what I do is I encourage you to start your own business, and you're going to start to find out really how hard it is to get business, how to get clients to pay you, and then you're going to get a first-hand lesson in terms of the struggles of being a business owner and entrepreneur. And for those people that are willing to put in the work and take the risk, they should reap the rewards.
I'm pretty sure that we're going to get comments such as, that's where Fabio gets his information from. Okay, let me move to the next question, because believe it or not, time is flying. We're already 33 minutes in, but this is beautiful. Anyway, one of the most important features that artists should have in order to be successful in business is, without a doubt, communication. You're a master of it. You are so good at talking. The ability to talk to a client, the ability to sound self-confident, the ability to keep calm, keep quiet, and know when to and how to respond. For the artists that are trying to get better at communicating, what would you recommend? Where should people start from?
Okay, there's a couple things that you can do. I'm going to get really
I asked you this question already in Milan.
Okay, so I will try again, see if I'm consistent, okay? First of all, realize you have 2 ears and 1 mouth, so you should listen twice as much as you speak. When you speak, it's just an opportunity for you to share what you already know. But when you listen, it's an opportunity for you to learn something new. So we should listen more than we speak. So when, Fabio, you're asking me this question, I'm processing everything that you're saying. Sometimes you'll see me, I'll close my eyes because I'm really tuning out my other senses, right? I'm really listening, and it's called active listening, and it can be physically very draining. I'll be exhausted after meetings because I'm listening to every single word, and I'm trying to read between the lines and understand the cadence and the tone in which you say things, because you'll lean into certain phrases and you'll lean out of phrases. So as you're talking, at a certain point, I'm going to reach saturation. The way you prevent that is you take notes. I don't write down every word that you say. I just write down the key words to capture the sentiment, because those are my mental breadcrumbs in which I can go back in time and review and then answer whatever it is that I think is important. A lot of times people will talk, but you're waiting to hear a problem. You're waiting to hear a question so you can filter out the stuff that's not important to you. And once you hear enough, don't be quick to give a piece of advice. Ask clarifying questions. It does two things for you. It shows the other person and it validates the other person that you're paying attention. So when you ask more questions about what they said, they're like, wow, this person really heard me. I felt heard. I felt listened to, and this is important for people. It also shows that you have an intellectual curiosity and that you're not quick to jump to conclusions. Those things are very beneficial to you. And the last thing that it does for you is it buys you time. When you have more time to think, what you're doing is you're entering into the archival brain, because there's like 3 brains: the reptile brain, the active thinking brain, and the archival brain. And the archival brain connects everything that you've learned to everything that you know, right? So this is new information. I'm going to connect it to everything that I know. And it's a very powerful thing because that's the smartest brain that you have. So when you are quiet and you give yourself time to think, you're digging into the archives to figure out what connects with what. And you're able to organize that. Now imagine if somebody says, what's your favorite thing? And then you have to respond right away. It doesn't give you any time to think. So most likely the answer that you're going to give is going to be a very true and gut expression of who you are, but not necessarily the best or smartest answer that you can provide. So listen more, ask clarifying questions, lean into what they're saying, and buy yourself a little time to let your smarter archival brain work, and then formulate ideas in your mind. And that's what I'm doing all the time. I'm not just talking, because part of it is I'm organizing. What will I say first? What will I say second? What will I say third? And then organize that in such a way before you open your mouth. And it's totally okay to be silent. Be comfortable in awkward silence, just to give yourself time to think.
When you said, when you were trying to explain this and you said, if I were to ask you what's your favorite thing, the first thing that came to my head was like pizza, but I cannot say that. Chris, okay, so this concept is very clear to me. Let's say that we have the other person that we're talking with, that it's not really intellectually curious, and it's a client that it's a very alpha and it's pushing things on you, like that's how you have to do it, that this is the kind of stuff that you want to do. How do you handle that kind of specific situation as a creative consultant?
Okay, I'm going to share something with you, and the answer might shock you. This is something that I've learned from Tony Robbins, okay? He says that every form of communication between 2 human beings is either 1, an expression of love, or 2, a cry for help. So when you describe this alpha person, probably what they're saying and what you're hearing is not an expression of love, right? It's probably a cry for help. So when they're coming at you really aggressively and saying you should do this shouldn't take that long, they're really dictating the terms in which you want to work. If we can reinterpret this instead of a fight or them accusing us of something and more as a cry for help, maybe we can respond differently. Let me tell you how. So somebody's coming at you really aggressive, really angry, they're rushing to get information out, and they're like, go, 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 go. Maybe you can just take a moment to acknowledge that, to say, I realize that you're moving really fast right now, and I just want to make sure, is everything okay? I feel that there's some anxious energy and that you're short on time. Should we reschedule this for later when you have a little bit more time? Or should we continue to proceed? So I want to acknowledge what's going on, and I don't want to respond a cry for help with my own cry for help, because then all we're going to do is fight each other. I want to respond a cry for help with an expression of love. So I want to appreciate and understand what's going on, and then maybe they're just having a really bad day, or perhaps the last person who promised them everything was going to work out totally screwed them over, and they just so happen to be standing in front of you right now. And then that's when they can say, you know what, the last person did this, I'm really not happy with where I'm at. Then you can say, well, tell me what happened. How did it go wrong? What are you looking for? How will you determine success? And now you've changed the entire energy from really negative, this powerful driving energy, to something that's more open and collaborative and honest. That's what I would try to do. You just need to understand that people don't necessarily see you and react the way that they should, that they're carrying around a lot of other information around with them. And you just happen to be the first person in front of them that they're going to release this energy to, because it's harmful for them to hold it. So do your best to wade your way through that and find a place of understanding and mutual respect.
Beautiful, beautiful. And, you know, people should really consider the non-speaking part of the conversation a little bit more, because I see it all the time. Even when I get into consultations, I see that everybody is trying to hurry and rush to a conclusion, when actually sometimes it will be nice to take a minute to just let things sink in and then process them, you know. Chris, I want to ask you one more question, because I've taken already 41 minutes of your time. The world of archivists, just like digital design, graphic design, they're very much based on like digital technology. Looking at the current trends, software becoming a lot more accessible and easy to use, computers getting fast and faster, competition coming from all over the places, services offered at a very low price from countries with poor living standards. How do you think designers can future-proof themselves so that, you know, they don't have to give up on their career and their dreams?
Yeah, you're speaking about a trend about how technology is improving our lives, but it's also increasing the amount of competition there is for the things that we do, because the barriers of entry are eroding. You don't need super amazing, super expensive computers. You don't need exotic software. You don't need technical directors to help you make images. And I'm trying to make a clear point on this. When The Lord of the Rings was coming out and they were showing the new character Gollum, Schmeagol, they were talking about subsurface scattering and how they were rendering his ear and showing that it's very lifelike in representation of human flesh. Less than 2 years later, one of my students at school was showing me subsurface scattering. So it took less than 2 years from it being on the bleeding edge to one of the most expensive films to something that a student can do. This is a problem, because this is going to be an erosion of barriers. So we have to just accept that this is going to be the case, that technology is going to improve, things are going to get cheaper for us to make on a technical level, but the artistry still has to be there. And we have to make this shift away from selling the things that we make in towards the things that we help our clients achieve. So it's not about the time and effort I put into something, it's more about the results that you achieve. And when we understand that, we can transform ourselves as not pure artists, but artists who serve a purpose. And I guess that would be called design. So we see the problem, we define it, we have agreement with the client that this is the problem worth solving, and we figure out the approach, and then they leave us alone to do the good work. Okay? So the way that you also avoid this whole competition and race towards the bottom is you have to realize something, that it isn't about the pixels. People don't buy what it is that you do. They buy the feeling that they get from working with you. So when you buy a pair of shoes, Nike, Adidas, or some other brand like Pony or Puma, each one does the job of covering your feet. Each one cushions your soul. But when you buy one or the other, you're connecting with a feeling. And that's what you need to understand. And that's truly what you're selling. So when you have an image, yes, it's so many pixels by so many pixels and so many colors, but what is that doing for the other person? And you're right, Fabio, it's allowing them to sleep better at night, knowing that they have a trusted partner who understands the vision, understands the end user's needs, and will do everything that's necessary to create an image that they're absolutely going to fall in love with. That's truly what you're selling. The technology, using Redshift or V-Ray, all that is just a means to an end, and it doesn't really matter that much.
Chris, believe it or not, we're 45 minutes in. I am so thankful that you decided to take the time. It was long overdue. We decided to do this 1 year ago, and then things took over.
Here we are.
But thank you very much. I'm really appreciative of the fact that you took the time, and I am pretty sure that people will find a lot of value in this. And I hope that people will get curious about your work, because I know that there is still a separation between what we do and what you guys are doing, and I think that you deserve to have a bigger presence in our field, and I really hope that this will bridge a little bit the gap with our community. Chris, thanks a lot for taking the time. I'm going to stop the recording. Don't go anywhere so that I can thank you, okay?
Yeah, I'm here. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. My pleasure. My pleasure.
You